All right, hello, Kenny. Pleasure to have you in this conversation. I'm very appreciative that you have joined me, that you have taken this time. You are currently in the cold place of Canada with a little bit colder temperatures that I have right here, right now. So, first of all, thanks again for having this conversation with me.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it today.
Nice to hear this. Now, on this podcast, we explore the stories of heroes that we come across and the obstacles, and usually there are stuff that we achieve and stuff and achievements that impress me when I go over the guests and I invite them to this podcast. You are no exception to this rule as well. There are a couple of things that stood out to me on for me on your profile. First of all, was that basically you made a transition from the previous community, the previous farming community that you grow in, into retail business and retail leadership. You also mentioned on your one of your profiles that you have currently some experience in tech startup building a product from scratch, which I've worked previously with different startups and marketers from startups, and I know how diverse this experience is and how difficult sometimes it can be, and how sometimes you are in the unknown but you still push through it. So a lot of a lot of obstacles that you've pushed through, a lot of stories that I can hear and the audience can learn from you. So thanks again for joining this conversation, and I hope that you can elaborate a little bit more on those stuff. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Awesome. And one other thing that actually you gave me a good impression for this is how focused you are on trying to help people. So on this conversation, I would love to hear in your journey, in your daily life, how you help those around you. But I want to start off this conversation, and I want to start off this journey by asking you what triggered you and when did it trigger you in the beginning, because it's usually the teenage years when we realize that we need to achieve something bigger with our lives and we need some change in our environment. Would you walk me and would you walk your our audience through the humble beginnings?
Yeah, so absolutely. So a little bit of my background. So my family, we were farmers way back as far as time permitted to ever measure. So right back to Ireland. My roots are in Ireland with my family.
Yeah.
So we were farmers there. My family came over to Canada during the potato famine that happened. And of course, we picked up right in Canada where we left off in Ireland. My great grandfather continued farming, as did my grandfather and my parents. And but it came to me at, as you had mentioned, that early age of getting to that, finding yourself as a teen, as most people do, what's the right thing for me? And one of the things that I had the privilege to do at a young age was to demonstrate leadership. Of course, growing up in that agricultural farming environment, I had a lot of experience that maybe people that were hired onto the business didn't have, because I just came up with it. It was part of my DNA. So I got to be the leader early on at a very young age. Made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot, but was really fortunate to have that. And I think what I really realized as I was getting ready to go to college and figuring that part of my life out was, but at one point I was really thinking, oh, I've got to be a farmer. I've got to study agriculture because that's what all my family has done before me. And I realized what I really enjoyed most wasn't so much agriculture, was leadership. I enjoyed being that team captain, that person that's going to help mentor, guide, and get people where they want to go. And so that's what took me down the road, by heading into a 360 change at the point of going to college. Instead of going to ag school, going to business school for me was a huge change that happened almost overnight per se. I was very fortunate to get hired by a retailer here in Canada that was kind of family owned, really invested in their people, really wanted to have people stay in the business long term. And I was lucky enough to have some great mentors along the way, that through college I stayed with this company in the retail sector that helped me grow. Finishing college, I had lots of opportunity, but I stayed with them because of the investment they made in me. They wanted to see me grow. and become a leader inside the organization. So that was really the base that got me where I was heading. That kind of that epiphany moment was realizing at that young age, 18, 19, in the college realm, that I really love business. I really love helping people grow, be successful, and really did that whole change from where I was probably meant to go from a family aspect to where I ended up today.
Fair enough. And so a couple of things that stood out to me here. First of all, yes, you're very focused on the leadership aspect of it. And you mentioned that it started on in an early age. And a couple of values that stood out to me or while you were speaking was investing in the long-term development of the people around you, like the team that you're building and that you're working with. And this is one of those things that also impressed me in one leader, like trusting your team, trusting your employees, and giving them this benefit of the doubt to give them the space to grow and to explore. And you also mentioned that obviously we all learn from our mistakes and our failures. This is what makes us better leaders, better experts. What were one of the first big failures in your leadership roles that taught you the right lessons to carry on with you?
Yeah, so we could probably spend a whole saga of the next 10 weeks talking about all those, but I'll pick one. One that really comes to mind for me was just gaining that trust early on with the team. So I've been very fortunate. I've been able to be a part of many teams, lead different teams. If I remember back to one of the things that I maybe faltered early in my career, being a young leader, I'm talking early 2021, 22, very young to be leading a team of 50, 60 people, for say,
Yeah.
was making sure I built that trust with them. They had that sense that they could count on me as the team captain, that I could be there for them, that I trusted them to make the right decisions. And I'll tell you, the moment I got that, the moment I was able to achieve that, which wasn't right away, that was a game changer. I did better personally. I was more successful. My store did better. My team was more engaged. It is a huge changer.
And all right, but what exactly did you think brought that trust? Like how did you exactly win their trust at this point, being a young age and a young leader of a huge group of people?
I think I had a mentor that told me once, those who plan the battle rarely battle the plan. So
Mm.
getting them involved in the decision wasn't just, and I think many leaders, especially starting at a young age, that they'll be that person that, oh, I'm making all the decisions. The truth of the matter is, the more you can get your team to make those decisions for you, and the trust that guidance and training, they're making the right decisions, that's where you want to be. That was the game changer for me. So really taking that from Kenny making the decisions on this is what we're doing today for the business to, okay, we're going to make those decisions together. And that whole mindset, it creates a different level of trust. It also creates a different level of leadership, because now you're teaching people to be leaders, to make those business decisions, so eventually they can be promoted and take my job someday.
I love the fact that you have taken this approach in this direction because I've been on both sides of the coin, being led and being a leader, and it's usually the worst leaders are the ones that want to micromanage everything. And I have those experiences as well, like where people, CEOs of big companies, want to micromanage each task and every process, which it just blows my head away. But what else that you mentioned was that you communicated the common objectives, the common goals of the team. And the other thing that you mentioned, that you are bringing them up as leaders as well, right? And most successful companies usually follow the same North Star, right? They have one clear objective and they make sure that the whole company, the whole team follows this specific path. How exactly do you communicate this across the board?
I think there's different avenues you can take with that, but like one-on-one communication, there's nothing that beats one-on-one communication. I know there's a lot of companies out there really focused on, let's say, email or digital communications.
Yeah.
Anytime that I get the chance to communicate face to face with one of my team members or a group, and communicating through the levels. It's one thing for me to communicate to, let's say, my management team, but are they communicating to their team? And so, for depending on what level of leadership inside the organization you're at, you got to make sure it's going down, and you're following up. So you need to make sure the message is getting through. So I can't inside a company today. I'm a part of them. It's a very large team. I can't face to face with everybody as much as I'd love to have that experience. So I have to make sure that people that are trained properly, that know how to communicate, and the message is going to get to them the same way that it is being portrayed for me at the end of the day. But you know what? It is a digital age too. There's a lot of people that, especially that younger generation, they're preferring a different type of communication. We see that every day. So it's not forgetting about them as well, especially with, we're talking about hybrid workplaces. Getting that information to them is totally different than it ever was before. Utilizing the different channels, finding out what's the right one for them that they like, and utilizing it.
Just to confirm, you cater the channels and the ways of communication to the team, and you also focus and prioritize the one-on-one communication rather than to one person speaking to the broad audience. Am I right?
Absolutely. My personal commitment is that I want a one-on-one with everybody on my team within a quarter. Just not so much a formal sit down and a checklist, and we're going to make sure that all the goals and objectives are hit. It's just focusing, how are they doing? How am I doing for them as the team lead, and just what's happening in their life that we can celebrate and be a part of.
This is something else that I love that you've mentioned, focusing also on their personal lives. This is something that stood out to me in one of my previous experiences. Simply taking the time, let's say 1 or 2 hours on a Monday, to actually talk with each other, how was the weekend, and to actually identify, okay, if this person is going through something in his personal life, some obstacles or some even events that needed to be celebrated. Just recognizing that there is actually life outside the work environment as well.
Absolutely. We spend a lot of time together with our colleagues, our teams. It's important that we recognize what's going on outside of that group as well.
Great. I love the fact that you've mentioned this. Something that you mentioned also a couple of things, and in our messaging as well, that one of the coaches that you had, one of the coaching sessions that you have had, like, was a huge turnaround of your mindset in a positive way. Can you walk me through what happened on this session and what was exactly that triggered the change?
Absolutely. So I was very lucky early on to have some fantastic mentors. I think anybody that is successful, we're all a product of where we came from, who we've been around, who's taught us the path that we've ended up on to be successful. With this one session, this one gentleman was a huge mentor. He had one saying that I'll never forget. That was people first, process second, and you have to know your purpose. Those three things together, you have to have that. But it starts with the people. They have to know what they're expected of them. What's the process, no matter what organization you're in, and everybody has to be aligned. There has to be a purpose there, so we're all kind of rowing the boat in the same direction.
People, processes, and purpose. Right?
That's right.
This is like very simple and very encompassing in the same time, because they're all related to each other, right? You cannot have the processes without putting the right people in the right positions. And if the people are not familiar with your purpose, and again with the North Star that we've mentioned, then there's no point to follow those processes, because it's not clear where they are headed.
Absolutely.
Great, great. And so tell me a little bit more, like, what you also mentioned, that you are trying to bring product into a tech startup to build it from scratch, which is not that relevant to the retail experience that you have had, or for example, not at first glance. Probably you have found some interconnected sections. What made you try something new, and what was the timeline of you doing this stuff?
It's a really interesting story. So I have some friends that are really close in the automotive industry, we talk quite a bit about business, different things. Having that process background, I'm always thinking, how do we find a better way? When they talk about problems and roadblocks and pinpoints in their business, it always gets my wheels turning. It gets me excited. Like, how could I help them in their journey to be better, be more successful? So I never planned on starting a tech startup. I'm still working on it, so I'm right in the trenches right now. So that's the fun part. What really came out of it was I ran into a consultant one day, and I was helping it was actually a customer in my business, and we started chatting, and of course, what do you do? What type of business do you consult for? And of course, it came up automotive, and so shared a few things. I said I came up with this really awesome idea for a tech business based around the whole efficiency of managing inventory. As automobiles, very expensive. Big ticket items. It's not just a can on the shelf in the grocery store. It's a big ticket item. I shared a little bit about that, and you really should run with that. So you should really look into that. I think you got something great. That really sparked my interest. I never planned on going down that road, but my whole thing is I so in love helping people be better, helping them with their process going back. I also have a Lean Six Sigma background as well as part of my education that really helped blossom that drive. So yeah, that's how I got started on the journey of trying to work through a tech startup.
Okay, fair enough. And the fact that already a couple of the previous guests mentioned that they came across their purposes by accident makes me think that this is actually what you need to be doing, because we think that it's an accident, but at the same time, when you take a look at the bigger picture in 5 years or in 10 years, and you look back, you're thinking like, oh, all of these small things, all those small events were supposed to happen, right?
Absolutely. I'm a strong believer everything happens for a purpose. Going back to that purpose, that line that you got to have purpose no matter if it's in business or in life. And certainly interested to see where this takes my journey and my purpose.
And you emphasize again on making people better, helping them define some processes and enrich their lives in such a way. Would you say this is the main purpose that you're focusing on, and is this the kind of legacy and the kind of story you would like to leave on this earth?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just the ability to help people in general that be better in their own lives, in their own business, just to help them have wins. I think there's nothing for me that's been more rewarding than helping somebody maybe achieve a business objective or a career objective, and be a salesperson that never thought they could reach a seven-figure target, helping them get there. Maybe it's a new employee that, look, I want to be in this position someday. And I said, great, let's figure out how to make it happen. Those things for me, that's better than a monetary gift.
It's a very comforting thing for me to be speaking with people like you and the previous guest. And I'm mentioning this because they also had a similar approach to life, like looking for ways to help people, whether it's helping entrepreneurs, helping people find a new job, as you just mentioned. For example, pick a specific role that you're aiming for, and let's help this person reach the specific goal. But the bottom line is looking for ways to leave the world and to leave the places around us a little bit better after we've been there. And I feel this is what you're trying to do, no matter if it's in the agricultural industry back in the days or the retail management part in your professional path. It's still some specific way to help those around you and help a specific audience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things one of my big win moments, I always say, what's the items that happen in life that you're going to put in the fridge? With a magnet, what do you want to look at every day? And I had an associate, a person that worked with me at one time. He worked for me in college, and he went on to other things. He got interviewed for an article on my business website, and he mentioned me. And I hadn't talked to this person for a couple of years at that point, but he referenced me and what I was able to do to help him be successful. And that for me was probably one of the best days I've had in business. That'd be one of them.
It's the more conversation I have this, the more I realize that as soon as a person finds a way to help somebody else, this is how they start paving their real path towards being this specific hero that we are talking about. Because usually in the hero's journey, we have this phenomenon of the student becoming the teacher. One of the most common things, you struggle, you grind your way as a student until you become the teacher and you pass on the lessons that you have learned towards the next generation. And currently you are already on that track, it seems, right?
No, I'm very lucky to say I am. I think it's humbling to think about being able to help people in that way, because if somebody has a true passion to do that, it's not for any reason but that feel good feeling. That's that win at the end of the day. I've never met anybody that said, "Oh, I want to do this for money." That's just not something that anybody successful, I think, would do. And I'm very lucky to say I'm on the journey.
I want to follow up with another question about something very a common topic in our current conversation, and this is purpose. And finding your own purpose, finding your own goals to set. And you also mentioned it in our conversation off camera, that a couple of events, personal events, happened to you that made you realize better what is your purpose and made you set more clear goals for you. How exactly did it help you define those goals? Can you tell me the difference of how those goals improve?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a few years back, I was very fortunate to go to join a team that needed some help, and the organization knowing I'm that person, I love that challenge. I was able to dive deep, get in there. The location I was at had prior to me had 4 new leaders in the last 4 years. So the last one only lasted about 10 months before he exited the business. And again, not so much look for other opportunities. They left. They said, I can't do this. This is not for me. What that does, it creates a sense of distrust from the team, the associates on the group, because you're having a new leader come in the door every so many months. That's not a comforting feeling. During that time, on the personal side, I had some things going on that was some things that really gave me that sense of, I got to figure out my purpose. I lost my brother tragically. I almost lost my father within a 12-month period. During that whole time, I became a father for the first time. And you want to talk about a life-changing event that really makes you want to find your purpose. And so I think through all of that, being able to gain that trust of that team that didn't have trust and build the business, because it's funny, gaining that trust, it had a direct correlation with the P&L, with profits on the end of the business, getting people fired up. But going through that rough time personally also gave me that sense of, I got to figure out what I want to do. What at the end of the day, what everybody needs to know, what their legacy is going to be. May it be, I know for me, a lot of it had to do with my son. What if my son opens a book someday and reads about Kenny? What do I want to say? So that was definitely a big eye opener for me. Just that whole, if there's ever a book written about myself, what's that first chapter look like, and how does that story go? And I think that really just motivated me to do more, help more, figure out what my calling is.
It is funny how, like, when there is a kid involved or kids involved in the process, in the grand scheme of things, the the scope of thinking changes drastically. Even if beforehand, before you have a son or a daughter, you think about it. Yes, if you're ambitious, you might want to set some specific legacy. You might want to tell yourself, okay, I have to push harder and to be able to provide for the future kids that I will one day have. But it is very different once these kids pop into the real world, right? I still don't have any kids. I'm just assuming how it is, but speaking with people who already have some children and trying to leave some legacy, the difference is huge, I assume, right?
Absolutely. It really is a change. It makes you look at things differently. It makes you appreciate life more. And really, what can you do for them? What road can you let them go down to develop them to be successful in what they want to do in their journey?
And something else that you mentioned, like You gave this reference, like if they want to open the first chapter of Kenny Brewster, and what exactly are they going to read? What is the history of your family name, your roots, and all of this? And today we live in a digital age that most of the things we do are recorded. And in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, our kids really easy can do a research on our names, much easier than we can do on our ancestor now. The fact that you have joined this conversation and you're leaving a piece of your own story here for your kids and for your close circle to check it out, even either now or in a couple of weeks or even years, it will still be present and still leave a mark in the digital presence. I hope you can your story and your path can relate to as much people as possible, because I appreciate your purpose to actually help people better themselves and better their lifestyles in one way or another. And this being said, hoping that other people relate to your journey and to your story in our own lives, we also have our favorite stories or our favorite heroes that we look up to, that we always turn to for inspiration. Do you have a specific fictional or non-fiction story that helps you push through tough challenges?
Yes, no, certainly there's lots there. I think the story that really, for me, that really touches home it is not one that's written on paper or in a book somewhere. It's the story that my mentor that gave me that first connection told me about his life. That he told me about his father, and his father was a roofing contractor. He installed people's roofs, reshingled. That was his life, and he told me about his father's drive for success and what the impact that it had on him and his career. So this gentleman, he owned a doctorate of business, and he said even to this day he met lots of people in different environments, but the person that mattered the most to him, to his career, was the business advice he got from his father, who didn't have a high school education. That kind of message that he left was, we're really we're all able to tell our own story. It's all what we make it. It's not what we go and study. It's not the pieces of paper we hang on the wall. It's really the story that we make, what we go out there and do as business leaders, entrepreneurs, and how we help people. And I think that story of what he shared about his dad and how he had that influence on him to go places, and that he had more of an impact than some of the people. This guy knew some very famous people, not to name drop, in the business world in North America, throughout the world even. And he still reported back the smartest guy he ever knew in business was his dad.
Okay, okay, got it. It is funny how, first of all, it's not a fictional story, and at the same time, it's something very close and personal to you that comes from the coach. And obviously, this coach has had a huge impact on your way of thinking in a positive way. So, shout out to this person, and I'm happy that he or has left such an impact on you.
No, absolutely.
Amazing. Before we wrap up this episode, now, first of all, thanks again for walking me through some of the details of your story. And for sure, I'm missing out on some other important aspects of it, which in one episode, it doesn't happen to elaborate on the whole story, which is why I would love to have another season, another round to tell these stories with each other. But let me know if there is something that we didn't manage to communicate, if there's something specific that you would like to tell the audience.
No, I think we got I really appreciate the time to come on and share my story. I think there's the one thing that I guess I would leave our audience with is, don't be afraid to tell your story. There's so many people out there that they have so much to offer. I've learned so much from people doing job interviews. I love asking, tell me your story. Tell me how you got here. What's your passions? That's, if anybody's been a job interview with me, that's the first question, is tell me your story. So that's my challenge. Anybody out there, if you get a chance to tell your story, make sure that you take that opportunity. And thanks so much for having me tell my story today. It's been an honor.
I love the fact that you're closing off with this, because for sure I see the same thing. Everybody has some story, everybody has pushed through challenges and obstacles that if you just share it, there will be somebody to relate to, and then you can help them in one way or another. So I'm sure that you have helped our listeners with giving us some nuggets and giving us some behind the scenes of your journey. And once again, thanks for taking this time and thanks for joining this conversation, Kenny. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine, sir.
Great. See you.